Cybercriminals are working overtime. Last year in the fourth quarter alone, phishing attacks disguised as COVID testing information increased by 521%. Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats and how cybercriminals use them to steal money from your company or personal information from your employees and customers. Find out about the 13 email threat types and how Barracuda can provide complete email protection for your teams, your customers, and your reputation. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Account takeovers, malicious campaigns, impersonation, and data breaches are on the rise, driven by the pandemic and security challenges of a remote workforce. The number one most common attack vector in breaches is compromised credentials. Constella Intelligence protects your key employees from digital risk by continuously monitoring the deep, dark, and surface web for exposed credentials, detecting threats that others miss with real-time alerts to protect you and your company from a targeted attack. Try it free at securityweekly.com/Constella. People require access from anywhere to resources everywhere, but legacy security is ill-equipped for today's hybrid organization. Appgate SDP delivers zero-trust network access for hybrid workforces and workloads, empowering trusted users with secure, frictionless connections to only what they need. Make your attack surface invisible and reduce time to provision by 91% with Appgate SDP, a leader in the 2021 Forrester ZTNA New Wave. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Appgate.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Tyler Robinson. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review suggestions monthly and we'll reach out to you once reviewed. Also, we have a couple webcasts coming up soon. First, join us on March 2nd to learn 5 things you can do to catch more bad guys. Live attendees will have the chance to win a $100 gift card to Hacker Warehouse. Then join us March 10th for an intro to KQL queries. To register for these webcasts, visit securityweekly.com/webcasts. And don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, now the explosive article is the last article in this segment, so you have to hang out for a little bit to get Jason's blood boiling. However, I wanted to start this first article. I thought it was a really interesting article. Assess your leadership with one question. Are the people around you better because of you? And I thought that was a really interesting question and way to think about you as a leader.
So, when studying leadership, you take a look at that pinnacle of leadership capabilities, right? And in many instances, you'll find it's called servant or servitude type leadership. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that statement. As a leader, our goal is to build everyone around us, to make them better leaders, better managers, better versions of themselves, better human beings. I've said it a million times on the show. My goal as a leader is to teach the folks who report to me how to put me out of business and take my job. That's my job as a leader. I 100% agree with this article.
That's not just leadership, though, right? Like, no matter where you sit in the totem pole, if you learn how to practice this well, if you're very low in the help desk, just getting started, you're a student, this is generally being a good human, and thus you should do it. But this will actually go a long ways to further your professional career, make meaningful connections. Like, I can't tell you how many things happen and the number of business opportunity that's been provided because of doing a few of these things just at a low level and maintaining that good human nature over the years, those relationships you establish. And as you move into leadership, the more you build people up, you would be surprised how much that pays dividends. Maybe not in a year, maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 5 years, but in your long-term career, it goes a long ways.
Yeah, and that's the epitome of the philosophy, Tyler, that leadership isn't a job description or a title or your level in an org chart. It's not, right? It's innately how you operate. And I've seen folks with incredible, just natural leadership talent, and they've been in the organization for 6 months to a year, right? So that's the key there. Leadership is something that you take on that level of responsibility to make everyone around you better, no matter where you are in the org chart.
And as a good leader, you'll identify those people and bring them up. And maybe maybe you don't have a great leadership staff, or maybe people don't see that for who you are. Keep doing it, because that will pay off at the next place. You've practiced it. You've done well. Your good leaders will often see that, and it will provide pathways that would have not been a natural way in which to move up in the org. You'll find interesting and unique possibilities that end up happening.
It's also a great recruiting tool, because when you move and you're looking to hire that next set of staff that you want, those people are going to come with you because they believe in you, they trust you, they're better off because you did the right things for them. It's a great recruiting tool. I don't think people realize how important that is as you move organizations. Those relationships you build as a leader, they will follow you if there's an opportunity for them to follow you. And I think it's just something people forget about some days.
Yeah. And just a little shout out. I didn't realize till I scrolled to the bottom of the article. This was an article by Mike Sant'Arcangelo. So
yeah,
kudos to Mike.
Yes, he used to host the show, and he does fill in occasionally when I need a fill in. But yes, that was the other reason I brought this article in, because it's Santa's article. So, but it's such a great article, and I think just something to think about as leaders. Like, are the people around you better? Because if they are, then you've done your job as a leader. The second article I brought in here because as leaders, we have to set objectives and key results, right? It's an expectation for us. And I've been having this debate internally for the last year and a half since we got acquired about how do you set objectives and measure key results? Because I have a very specific philosophy which aligns to this article. Which other organizations are still kind of learning. And so the reason I brought this article in is because it's near and dear to my heart. Mm-hmm. As a business leader, you're expected to set certain objectives. Okay, great. Well, then how do I measure those objectives? What are the key results that I have to do? Now, I'm a very bottoms-up kind of inventory guy, right? When I think about building a financial model and building a plan, I think about the bottom up. Because if I know my objective is to get to $20 million, let's say, I need to understand the inventory I need to sell and the costs associated with that inventory to meet it. Because if I don't understand those basic foundational elements, how am I ever going to know what I should be measuring to make sure I can hit the $20 million? Because you can't just throw a number out there and just have no idea how to get to it, right? And so the reason I brought this article in is this is one of the things I've been going through over the last year and a half is, okay, guys, you want to get to this number, that's fine. But here's what you have to sell to get there. And here's the cost associated with delivering so you understand what your actual profit is. It's like this mind-blowing concept.
I come from a very, very similar type framework, Matt. And I studied the 4 disciplines of execution. Which ultimately, aligns very, very well with the thought process of OKRs, right? And ultimately, it's a bottom-up approach, because as leaders in the organization, we're going to set a mission, we're going to set the values, and we're going to set some very high-level strategic goals for the entirety of our organization. But now it's up to us to work with the different business units to enable them to create objectives, right? And those key results that they want to be able to report out on that are going to allow us to get to those goals and drive to those goals over time while we have the ability to measure it, right? So we're creating these goals that, number one, are achievable, and number two, have to be measurable, right? And we go and we're able to map that roadmap and that strategy to those high-level goals that we set as an organization or as the leaders in the organization. Now, the one thing that I will say is that we have to keep in mind as we're doing this and we're setting these key results, remember that there are 2 different types that we can be reviewing. There are lead measures and lag measures. If you're looking at lag measures, you're looking back in time. If you're looking at lead measures, it gives you the ability to be proactive and shift on a dime, right? So just note that that's one thing that over the course of my career, I made sure that we had a good balance between lead measures and lag measures. So we always weren't looking through the rearview mirror, right? Where we could have a little bit of windshield time and proactively shift on a dime to change the results of some of the things that we were doing if we needed to shift our approach.
Yep.
I think one of the other good balance features that you have to keep in mind as a leader as well is when you get to the place where you're being this strategic or you're in a leadership role, that typically means you're either very disciplined and kind of methodical. You've got a very strategic, logical mind. You're very probably type A personality. You have to build these kind of bumpers and roadways and provide maps for people without hinging or inhibiting them from doing what they do well in their creative motion. There's a lot of people that track things differently, think differently. They don't have the logical, straightforward map that they would follow. So providing them the guidance of allowing them to have those kind of measurable and trackable and achievable moments, which they may not otherwise have if you're very scattered, very creative, but not taking away that creativity, because that is often where many people build revolutionary products. That's where you get some of your very unique ideas, and that's where businesses tend to interact with their customers well, is through that creativity, that awareness and identification and relationship, which is usually outside of the strategic and logical side of some of this. So focusing in on both sides of that and realizing that there's a lot of different personality types that have to kind of play into these strategies and OKRs, and you can make them do that, but you can do that in a meaningful manner that doesn't inhibit them as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, right? It's the balance between not micromanaging the outcome, right? At the end of the day, as leaders, let's not micromanage the outcome. Let's set them on a path to be able to achieve it, right? And help guide them on how they can measure those type of outcomes and the results that we're getting. But yeah, micromanagement becomes a hindrance, becomes a roadblock, and ultimately becomes, something that you're gonna find issues retaining talent if you're doing that, because they're not going to want to stick around.
100%. Yeah, we talked about this before. It was a concept of guided goals, or guided incentives, or guided initiatives. Right? I don't have to set your goals, but I'm going to give you a direction of where I want them to align as a leader. I should be, and I do with my team now. As we're working through goals for 22, I'm like, guys, these are the big initiatives, right? So your goals need to align to these initiatives. I don't care exactly what it is, but I'm guiding on where those major initiatives are to hit the OKRs. And therefore, your individual goals should align to those initiatives. And I think as leaders, we need to guide those people, not micromanage them, but give them direction.
Absolutely. With the balance of ensuring there's a cadence, right? Because in order to move the needle, you need to make sure there's some focus in some portion of your either daily or weekly activity to make sure you're keeping abreast, because humans are so good at getting caught up in the whirlwind. We run 1,000 miles an hour. We take on a lot. We do a lot, especially in technology and cybersecurity. The key is don't get stuck in the whirlwind of the day-to-day. Force that focus time to be working on these strategic initiatives. Otherwise, you'll be looking down the barrel of 6 months going by and you've done nothing. So just be careful of the whirlwind, be careful of the day-to-day, force that strategic time in your calendar, and you'll be on a good spot.
Yeah. This next article, everyone wants a seat at the table. The CISO and CIO roles evolve. Short little video clip from Mitch Ashley. And I thought I agreed with most of it. There was one little piece I didn't agree with, and he says security is not about risk management. I went,
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but it is. Like, really, it is.
Yeah, that was sad trombone when he said that. No doubt about it. I could just hear it going off in my head, But at the end of the day, he made a very, very good point. And adapt to the strengths that you have within your leadership team and do what your culture of your business allows you to do. Right? I come from a history where the culture that I was in and just the way the stars aligned within the organization, I had the ability to go from CISO, right, who was managing internal security operations, governance, risk, and compliance, and our customer-facing offers for an IT services organization. The opportunity arose for me to do the same thing for the entirety of the technology stack as CIO, right? But during that conversation, I made it very apparent to the folks on the board and to the CEO of our organization and to the CFO that CISO title does not leave, because it's that important, right? Because I considered myself a security first CIO, but the culture allowed for it. The opportunity in the business was open for it. And at the end of the day, I would say I had the strength to be able to do it within my acumen. So it worked out very, very well.
Yeah.
Which is completely different from the BSO role that we talked about last week, which was a great episode. If you didn't watch it, there's some awesome discussion and dialogue there around that role and how that's different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Mitch talked about the importance of working with the developers and the software teams, and you just heard Fleming talk about everything software. That leads into this next article from the News Stack that talks about partnering across the different teams to create a cybersecurity culture, and this is really around the AppSec teams. I've been a big proponent of this for a long time. We talked a little bit about security champions programs in the past. I know Ben's implementing a security champions program. I think, Jason, you are as well.
I have in the past, right? That's my caveat is don't make changes and substitute the need for liaisons throughout the business, right? I mean, ultimately, that's the strength. When you have a liaison in every business unit, whether it's a BSO or it's someone, I've had a lot of success with folks who are embedded in the organization who don't have cybersecurity backgrounds, but they have an inkling to want to be involved, and they have knowledge of the business and knowledge of that business unit's processes and the applications. And they've excelled, right? They've excelled tremendously. And number one, being an advocate for the security department. Number two, creating the necessary change and that culture change that was needed within that business unit. And then being an evangelist. That's a huge piece, is being an evangelist for the cybersecurity team and just having that person who can sit there and beat the drum of cybersecurity every day.
You open those communication lines too with inside those departments, and not having that single point of failure, but really distributing that load and getting all of the departments, not just the champions, which is a fantastic program I've seen work well over many, many organizations, but getting the leadership within inside of each of those departments, if they're not the champion, getting them on board so that there is that continuous flow, that non-single point of failure for open dialogue, constructive criticism and feedback, communication loops, all of those things that really make a big difference in security. Like all the blinky boxes and budget that you can come up with does not equal anything in measure to a good communication channel and a little bit of championship behind other departments.
Yeah, and I've always advocated relationships at all different levels, right? At a C level, build strong relationships. At your VP level, build strong relationships. At director levels, all the way down, right? Build those strong relationships, because trust is that foundation of every single relationship that we have. And once you're a trusted business partner within the organization and they know you're there to support and not be a roadblock, at the end of the day, you have so much ability to influence the direction that those departments are going in and the strategies that those departments are creating, because you're part of those conversations. They want to bring you in. It doesn't become a reactive conversation. It becomes a proactive strategy.
All the way down to the help desk. You'd be surprised the
100%.
amount of things you can learn for creative ideas and hangups with inside the organization from people that have to operate the day-to-day. And if you have that trust and that communication channel, the amount of signal that ends up coming back up to you through either direct path or a different path, that signal to noise ratio is something you can weed through. If you don't have any signal to deal with, you don't have the ability to make additional informed decisions. You don't have data points on that. So providing those communication channels and that trust aspect is huge for these groups.
I couldn't agree more. That's an instance where you have an executive assistant within the finance team raising their hand and saying, I think something's wrong, to a help desk person. And that just mitigated, let's say, a ransomware attack because of that, right? That feeling and that ability of having that trust, and that they're not going to get their hand slapped for raising their hand. Incredible benefit to the organization with that.
There's no technological replacement for that, unfortunately. There's no way to AI, ML, and blinky light box your way out of those things.
Agreed.
Ooh, speaking of ML and AI, why businesses struggle to become a data-driven organization. This HBR article, I brought this in again because this is a personal one to me. Like, everybody wants to be a data-driven business, and it's funny because it's way easier said than done. Because
I was just going to say easy, do hard, Matt. Say easy, do hard.
my gosh. I mean, I'm going through this right now. They're like, we want to be a data company. Well, what does that mean? What data? And how are we going to protect it? And what are we going to do from a privacy violation? I've actually been working with our chief digital officer on our risk management framework. I've been working closely with him because, having been on the risk management side and spending a bunch of time in my career on the GRC side, I'm helping him. And I'm like, these are the threats to us, right? A privacy violation would be huge for us because it could incur, a CCPR or GDPR fine, right? And so this article talks about some of the challenges in being a data-driven organization: ethics, AI, privacy. There's a lot of things you have to consider as a business to have this data. It's not that simple.
Yeah,
everybody wants.
Just from an integrity perspective, I've seen so many organizations who go into it saying we're going to be a data company, and they slap all this information together, and they have no data model, they have no data architecture, and the integrity of the data is shoddy, right? So I mean, just doing a level of cleansing on your information, knowing what you have, an inventory of the information, classifying that information. Those are like the baseline steps you have to do first to number one, understand what you have, understand the quality of what you have, and then understand the risk of what you're keeping.
Everybody wants that data. Everybody wants to have something, to do something with it, to monetize it. No one wants to do the hard work involved to actually do that well and to do that at scale. Like you can start out and you can definitely get into data, but you'll very quickly realize once you are becoming a really truly data-driven organization, and that is your product, the amount that starts to scale and the way in which you have to scale in order to keep up with security, privacy, all of the things that we've talked about, that exponentially gets harder to do and becomes a bigger cost that you have to take into account for.
Yeah. Ask Meta in their fights with the EU, and you'll know exactly the challenges.
Right. They can survive that fight. An SMB or an emerging mid-market can't.
Right.
I don't even know if that's considered a data-driven company. That's another level of data.
Right. That's a whole other. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, for organizations who say I want to be a data-driven company but have not done any of that level of foundational work, start small, right? Focus on the long-term journey. Know what you have, inventory what you have, classify what you have. Just know the current state, right? In order to be successful, you have to know the current state, design toward the future state, figure out what all those gaps are, and be ready for a journey, because it's going to be a journey.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of successful places that are doing now data-driven businesses. They did get their house in order beforehand. They were very security conscious. They got their culture right. Yeah. And the security practices, even starting small and doing the very best practices to start out with, the fundamentals first, and migrating that to a much more advanced level. By the time they got to the data part, like that was kind of already solved. They were now just dealing with logistics rather than data security, privacy, and all the other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, right? I mean, think about what you want that outcome to be. Build the foundation first, and then after that, it's snapping in all the different ways you want to model the data and get to the outcomes you're looking for. But start with a proof of concept. See how it goes.
Yes. Talking about journeys, the future of cyber insurance. This is the article, folks. I'm going to read one paragraph, and then I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to watch Jason go. Aside from raising premiums, some insurers are reducing coverage for specific industries, including education and healthcare, limiting how much cyber coverage they offer, or restricting contract terms. Some are extending standalone policies for cyber risk rather than bundling it in with the wider coverage.
Yeah. No kidding. We're starting to see letters fly all around industries about, insurers denying service and shutting organizations down from cyber liability insurance. I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago. Here in Rhode Island, we have every single municipality, every single school district, and some quasi-government entities who got letters from their carriers saying, as of July 1st, you're no longer covered for cyber liability insurance.
I think that there, that's kind of BS, right? Like, I think that's a bad blow for the industry. There are good insurance companies doing good things, I think that's kind of low, because these are the companies that do need the cyber insurance, that do need the support, that do need those backups, because they don't have the budget, they don't have the personnel, they don't have the expertise to do phenomenal cybersecurity. They're the ones that we need to support because they don't have good budgets. They don't have those people. Now, the people that do have good budgets and are abusing, and the reason why these cyber insurance companies are now losing money because of all the claims that they're doing, they had budget, they had resources, they had teams, and yet they decided that there was a business risk worth taking, and that business risk turned out to be the wrong one. And I think those are the ones that are causing a problem for the people that we probably should be covering. And I think that's kind of BS, honestly.
Yeah, you know what, though? And I mentioned it during the break. My fear is the slippery slope, right? This was low-hanging fruit for them. It was the easy button, right? They looked at public sector, government entities, school district. You know what? They'll go figure it out. They'll go partner with the federal government. They'll go find something, they'll raise taxes, do whatever they need to do. This was the low-hanging fruit. My fear is the slippery slope. When does this start bleeding over to SMBs, mid-market organizations, right? Mm-hmm. Emerging enterprises. And now all of a sudden we're all in this boat where, our insurance carriers say, thanks, but no thanks. We don't want you anymore, right?
So the other side to this that I think they don't see as a potential is, one, you do end up with businesses that go out of business because of this, because they cover something or they didn't have a policy in place. Like, that's sad. But the other side to this is you start to see the procurement and supply chain. This has a negative effect on that, because companies can't get cyber insurance, and so now they're starting to remove that requirement of having that cyber insurance from procurement, just so that companies can operate and they can get the supplies they need in order to do business. This is a ripple effect that could have an unintended consequence that I don't think anybody's thought through all the way.
Yeah, no, agreed, right? And one of the things that, and again, it's a consortium here who kind of runs the insurance coverage for all of the municipalities and school districts here. What they ended up doing was saying, we're going to try to find a carrier for you, try to find policies for you, but it's not guaranteed. July 1st, you're going to lose it. If we can't find another carrier, you're on your own. But if we can, here are the 20 things that you need to make sure you're adherent to, plus some, and then, connect with your local representative at CISA to go through some type of a resilience assessment. So, now what we're seeing right now is all the municipalities and the school districts scrambling to connect with the local resource here for CISA, who's already overworked and has a lot on their plate, right? Because they don't have all the talent they need. So now, these organizations it's going to take them 6 months to a year to even know their current state from an assessment perspective. They have some tools that you can run yourself, but you just said it, Tyler. Municipalities and school districts don't necessarily have the cyber talent to be able to do it, understand it, and be successful at running that assessment. So it's an odd conundrum that we're in, and it's it's really starting to bug the hell out of me. But you mentioned it in the last segment. There are some agencies, some security organizations, some insurance organizations who are doing it the right way. Hopefully, that's a trend that bleeds out, and we can start seeing that take hold. And we have more organizations doing it the right way.
It is going to have to get offloaded to some of the private, bigger cyber insurance companies that are doing this well. And I don't think we can really name names here, but those ones, who they are. They're doing a good job. They're offering things to get the organizations the visibility to see where they're at, and then providing them resources to change and make effect there. Because, like you said, look at CISA. That's a great example. They're so far behind, you might be lucky to get an assessment in a year or two. And that's if they can acquire the additional talent they're trying to acquire through some of the grants and billets that they're putting out there, and trying to change some of the pay rates. But even that, you're talking 6 months to 8 months in background checks and onboarding. So, the government has got a great program that they're spinning up to combat some of this. This really does fall back to the responsibility of the private sector and getting good companies and organizations in there to help some of these and provide, I would say, out of the box thinking. This is where the hacker space, we really need to get our hacker hat on, think through how we do this in a more meaningful manner that is short-circuited outside of the traditional, let's just get a pen test and charge you this much money for places that aren't going to get any value from it. Let's find better ways to do this quicker at a cost that makes sense to even small and medium businesses.
Yeah. That's another one of those things that's a do hard type scenario, because there's a ton of stakeholders that we need to get involved and just trying to break down some of these silos here in Rhode Island and barriers here in Rhode Island. It's conversations that I'm actively having with state government, local government, superintendents of schools, the insurance organizations, other folks who are in private industry. The university space wants to help. So it's getting all of these stakeholders together to collaboratively come up with a solution, because there's funds at a state level that we could tap into. There's funds at a federal level that we could tap into. There's, our commerce organization here, who's a quasi-state entity, that could help with some funding that they have, right? And really bring a bunch of key stakeholders together to really put a dent in this and move the needle. That's what it's going to take.
Yeah. And when almost half of people who responded to our survey said they were planning to spend more money on cyber insurance, but there's no cyber insurance policies to buy, that means they have to spend the money on all the other things, which is why I asked Fleming in the last segment, like, what are the things people have to do? Because if cyber insurance is not an option, or it's going to get more expensive to get cyber insurance, you're going to have to put in some of these compensating controls. You're going to have to make investments in security solutions. You cannot just rely on your cyber insurance policy to cover all this, because it's not going to be there.
No. And I mean, we're paying more money and we're getting less and less coverage, right? So, I mean, the article said that, insurance prices jumped anywhere from 10 to 30% third quarter of 2021. And then premiums are climbing now to a record of 26.6% increase, right? But we start to see the coverage shrinking. We're paying more, getting less.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're in this really, really crazy space when it comes to cyber liability insurance. And I hope that we can all get together and right the ship soon.
Let's hope so. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. And we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.